every one of you, Aquawa, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Roster Report here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginaBlack.com. My name is Keedy Owadu, aka the Conscious Roster. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Monday. No, it's Tuesday, the 6th of May. That is the year 2022, 2025 in the Western calendar, 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginaBlack.com. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the program today. I hope you find this subject matter to be compelling. Here's what we have on the table for today's discussion. Today on LIBradio.com. Africa is a vast continent with a diversity of geography, cultures, natural resources, and species. One thing that is uniting the continent is a unity among the people due to trade and resistance to external manipulation. From the heart of the Sahel comes a young leader, outstanding for his vision and passion to resist. Ibrahim Traoré is the natural inheritance of the great martyr Thomas Sankara. It is an imperative that all Africans must pledge to protect this young leader from foreign manipulation. It is imperative that all Africans pledge to protect this young African leader from foreign manipulation. So that's what we have on the table for today. We are talking about Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso. I do want to just take a moment here and share a few thoughts from the heart, from the mouth of President or Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the interim president of Burkina Faso. He has delivered several notable speeches and quotes. Here are just a few of these quotes. The first, and I use this into promotion for today's conversation, he says, a slave who cannot assume his own revolt does not deserve to be pitied. We do not feel sorry for ourselves. We do not ask anyone to feel sorry for us. Another quote from Captain Ibrahim Traoré: we are the forgotten peoples of the world, and we are here now to talk about the future of our countries, about how things will be tomorrow in the world that we are seeking to build, and in which there will be no interference in our internal affairs. And a third quote I'm going to share from Ibrahim Traoré: homeland or death. Traoré is quoted using the words of the legendary Cuban revolutionary leader Ernesto Che Guevara during a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Homeland or death. These quotes reflect Captain Ibrahim Traoré's stance against imperialism and its commitment to African sovereignty and self-reliance. African sovereignty and self-reliance. If you don't mind, I'd like to play just a few short pieces I got on YouTube Shorts. And this gives us a good idea of the stance of this brilliant young man, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. So if you don't mind.
Ibrahim Traoré has managed to unite Africans across the world in a way no other leader in modern history ever has. When U.S. AFRICOM General Michael Langley accused Traoré of plundering Burkina Faso's gold, the response was immediate and powerful. From the streets of Ouagadougou to protests in France, and even marches by Black Americans in the U.S., people stood up to defend him. It wasn't just about Traoré. It was about pride, sovereignty, and the right of Africans to choose their own path without foreign interference. The overwhelming support showed that Traoré has become more than just a national leader. He's a symbol of resistance and unity for Africans everywhere. Ibrahim Traoré.
All right. That was the first of two clips I'm going to share of about Ibrahim Traoré. And I tell you, we have seen these international marches taking place. And it gives us great sense of pride. Yet at the same time, pride is not going to change our destiny. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take people willing to stand up and say, I am prepared to give everything. I am prepared to give everything to make sure that this young leader gets a chance to fulfill his mandate, despite objections from the most powerful nations that have resisted Africa's true freedom. So Ibrahim Traoré, we've got your back. I'm going to play a second video here. I hope you don't mind. And this gives us a good idea of the forces that are behind Ibrahim Traoré that are willing to resist.
Commander Ibrahim Traoré and Vladimir Putin are furious. They've delivered a clear message. Anyone attempting to target Commander Traoré will face the consequences. Putin has sent a stern warning to Michel the Englishman. America must never dare to provoke Burkina Faso. Things are reaching a critical point. Stay alert because what's coming next will hit fast. It all escalated when foreign actors began interfering in Burkina Faso's internal decisions, trying to manipulate its destiny from thousands of miles away. Michel, the self-proclaimed English strategist, underestimated the willpower of a people who've risen to defend their land and legacy. But the response was swift. New alliances are forming. Silence is no longer an option, and the global balance is shifting in unexpected ways. This is no longer about gold. It's about dignity, sovereignty, and the right to self-determination. Anyone stepping into this fire, thinking they'll walk away untouched, is playing a dangerous game. And you, yes, you watching, this is bigger than a headline. This is a movement. Like the video now and stand on the right side of history. Commander Ibrahim Traoré and Vladimir Putin are furious. They've delivered a...
All right. That does shows the world that Vladimir Putin is prepared to get involved in the affairs of Burkina Faso should they be attacked and assaulted. Now, we do know there have been numerous attempts to overthrow Ibrahim Traoré, and that the latest attempt came from neighboring Côte d'Ivoire. From my understanding, there were two assassins with their guns trained on the president, and from behind, but that they did not pull the triggers. This is what we're up against, people. We're going to have to begin to take this much more seriously, Now, I am proud that to be an African today. I am truly proud to be an African today, to be able to see people standing up for sovereignty, for standing up for Ibrahim Traoré, standing up for an African visionary leader. Oh, absolutely. We are proud to be. So, therefore, we seek to bring all of this to a new height. And if you are in the house today and you believe in this vision, and here, bear with me. If you do believe in this vision, then we're going to ask you to just at least stand up and type in your viewing browser just a couple little words. I do support Captain Ibrahim Traoré. And that's it. Is that too much to ask for our people? It is not too much to ask from a people who genuinely care. So we're going to be talking about Ibrahim Traoré's accomplishments. We're going to be talking about his ideologies, his philosophies, where he got his upbringing, and the powerful impact and influence that Thomas Sankara had on this young man growing up. So if you don't mind, I hope you do mind. I hope you do take just a moment and raise up, stand up, identify with your people. There's only so much fear that we can allow to reign supreme before we stand up with our backs against the wall. Perhaps not, but we've got to do much, much better than we have been doing at this point. I'm going to go into the dialogue for today. I've got a lot of things to share. And here we go. Let's go into the dialogue. We're talking about Ibrahim Traoré, from soldier to symbol, how Ibrahim Traoré is becoming Africa's most loved and unapologetic leader. Loved and unapologetic leader. This written by Chinedu Okafor. This appeared in African Business Insider magazine on the 3rd of May, just 3 days ago, 2025. Here's what he had to say. And let me share this with you, our listening audience. And again, it is written by Chinedu Okafor. And bear with me. I have to get this up. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to share it also on the YouTube page, if you don't mind. And here's what the article has to say. Ibrahim Traoré became the transitional president of Burkina Faso after a military coup in September 2022. Under Traoré's administration, Burkina Faso has pursued a revolutionary and anti-colonial agenda, expelling French soldiers and strengthening ties with Russia. Burkina Faso has also nationalized its wealth by creating a state mining corporation. Ibrahim Traoré is a Burkinabe military commander and transitional president of Burkina Faso. Let's talk about Ibrahim Traoré's rise to power and popularity. Traoré is an artillery officer who had served in the army's counter-terrorism operations against jihadist insurgents plaguing Burkina Faso and the Sahel region. As mentioned earlier, he led the military coup in 2022, ousting Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who had previously come to power in a January 2022 coup d'etat. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Henri Sandaogo Damiba had been trained at the Army Special Forces Training Center. And that after having been trained at the Army Center, Sambo Damiba went right back to Burkina Faso and overthrew the previous government, of which then Captain Ibrahim Traoré comes in 6 months later and overthrows the illegitimate leader of that coup. So correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure on that. He and fellow officers accused the previous leadership of failing to deal effectively with the country's worsening security situation. Since assuming power, Traoré has positioned himself as a revolutionary figure, using anti-colonial and pan-African language, gaining inspiration for Burkina Faso's legendary former leader, Thomas Sankara. More than just a presentation, the revolutionary leader has demonstrated his anti-colonial sentiments. In the 3 years since becoming interim leader of the West African country, Ibrahim Traoré has taken on a rapid campaign to rid his country of any traces of Western influence. This has been done by nationalizing local wealth and expelling French soldiers from Burkina Faso, noting that they wish to tackle their security problem independently. In place of French partnerships, the radical leader has opted instead for Russian friendship. The junta-led Burkina Faso deepens Russia ties with new gold mining deal. In his administration so far, these moves have gathered for him a very high unofficial approval. In his administration so far, these moves have gathered for him a high unofficial approval rating, not just in Burkina Faso, but across Africa and amongst Africans in the diaspora. Ibrahim Traoré's economic reforms. As alluded to earlier, Burkina Faso is aiming for more control over its resources, and as such, has changed its mining legislation, creating a new state mining corporation, Société de Participation Minière de Burkina, SOPAMIB is what it's called, Société de Participation Minière de Burkina, and that's SOPAMIB. This move immediately scored points with people who have been advocating for a pro-national government where the country's wealth is distributed primarily within its borders. Burkina Faso utilized SOPAMIB to obtain control of 2 major industrial gold mines, formerly controlled by a London-listed Endeavour Mining. In April 2025, Burkina Faso's military-led government granted an industrial mining license to the Russian company Nord Gold for a new gold project. This move is projected to contribute $51.5 billion CFA francs, $89 million, to Burkina Faso's state budget over its lifespan, along with an additional 7.06 billion CFA francs to the country's mineral wealth fund, according to the Council of Ministers. Early in April, Burkina Faso also noted that it aims to gain more control over foreign-owned industrial mines and, by extension, a larger share of revenue from its natural resources. This development underscores Burkina Faso's ongoing shift toward economic nationalism under its current leadership. While the long-term outcomes remain to be seen, the push for sovereignty over national wealth represents a significant realignment in Burkina Faso's approach to economic governance and foreign investment. Ibrahim Traoré's geopolitical stance. Burkina Faso has been locked in a deadly conflict with Islamist militants since 2015, and as a result, has called for international assistance to combat the issue. Now, let's be clear, these militants in 2015 were the consequence of the destruction of the Libyan government under Muammar Gaddafi. With that destruction of Muammar Gaddafi's government, Libya was thrown into a failed state status, from which Islamic jihadists, perhaps at the invitation of Western powers, flooded this whole Sahara-Sahel region and destabilized the entire region. That from the actions of President Obama, along with his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. So let's be clear, this disruption that Burkina Faso, the other Sahel states, including Mali and Chad and Niger and Nigeria, were dealing with was the consequence of the destruction of that government by the US and France. So let's go forward. In January, however, since taking power, Ibrahim Traoré has expelled said, I skipped over a little section. No, I didn't. Let me go back and reread that and then go into it. Burkina Faso has been locked in a deadly conflict with Islamic militants since 2015, and as a result has called for international assistance to combat the issue. However, since taking power, Ibrahim Traoré has expelled said foreign backers, noting that they had been very ineffective in dealing with the security challenge. In January 2023, the 400-member Operation Sabre, which was sent in 2009 to combat armed organizations such as Al-Qaeda in the area, was given 1 month ultimatum to leave. This decision was made to create a self-sustaining security infrastructure, which has so far come with some drawbacks. 2024 alone saw the country suffer 5 of the most deadly terrorist attacks in Africa. Nevertheless, the Burkina Faso leader insists on finding help outside of an institution that had historically colonized the people. Currently, Burkina Faso is looking at a military cooperation with Russia, and negotiations are showing positive signs. This move works on several levels, especially considering that the people of Burkina Faso have welcomed the idea of a Russian partnership. This has contributed to fuel Ibrahim Traoré's popularity. While many knew of the wave of approval trailing Africa's youngest leader, his popularity as a whole became evident during the inauguration of the Ghanaian president, John Mahama, on the 7th of January, 2025. During the ceremony, the Burkina Faso leader stormed the stage with a pistol strapped to his holster. This was an interesting way to come to congratulate a fellow African head of state, and as a result, sparked some banter on social media. But what has truly caught everyone's attention was the round of applause that accompanied his arrival. On that day, many social media users were introduced to the revolutionary leader who had originally, organically garnered the love of many Africans. Since then, it has been an accepted rhetoric on social media that Ibrahim Traoré is one of the most pro-African heads of states in the modern era. Subsequently, Traoré's popularity would peak after General Michael Langley, the head of the U.S. military in Africa, Africa Command, declared publicly during a U.S. congressional hearing that the Burkina Faso president had become a person of interest who uses Burkina Faso's gold to shield himself. This, of course, did not bode well with young Africans who have begun to embrace him as the ideal image of a true African leader. And more than just a conversation online, people have been taking to the streets to express their love and support for the man calling for his protection. As recently as April 30, large crowds of demonstrators gathered at Ouagadougou's Place de la Revolution, chanting, "Long live Captain Traoré." Some of them had banners that displayed a picture of General Langley with the word slave scrawled in red marker on his head. Others carried the flags of Russia, a key friend of the West African nation, and Burkina Faso. It also did not help that the military government of Burkina Faso reported shortly before the demonstrations that a, quote, major plot, unquote, to overthrow the junta leader had been foiled. This has led to whispers that some foreign groups are plotting to depose the West African leader as a result of his anti-Western initiatives. As it is with movements, the international community is now paying attention, with some picking sides. That article, wonderful, extensive article. And I do see a comment from Jamar Richardson. Welcome to the conversation today. Jamar writes, Traoré is trying to do what Gaddafi tried to do. Excellent point that you make. And Muammar Gaddafi was being successful at it. Unfortunately, those who could protect Muammar Gaddafi did not. South Africa readily comes to mind. I think that South Africa learned its lesson there. But unless there is a new style of leadership represented by Julius Malema in South Africa, then South Africa will still yet remain in a deferential position to Western power. That's too bad, because South Africa has the ability to defend itself. South Africa has a large military industrial complex. Yes, it does. But it takes, obviously, visionary leadership and a sense of willingness to self-sacrifice. And I think that could have been the problem. The sacrifices demanded of South Africa would have been very great. But resistance is necessary. We're going to change the future. And we're going to make that commitment to change the future. Ashe. Thank you for your comments, Jamar. I think you're absolutely right on point. We welcome you, our listening audience, to join the conversation today. And we encourage each and every one of you. I was just reading from an article from Chinedu Okofor from AfricaBusinessInsider.com. Leaders from soldier to symbol, how Ibrahim Traoré is becoming Africa's most loved leader. I'm going to go forward. Let's talk about the accomplishments of Ibrahim Traoré. I think that this is a wonderful point about the man's leadership. Ibrahim Traoré's accomplishments, economic growth. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso's GDP grew from approximately 18.8 billion US dollars to 22.1 billion. Point number 2, nationalization of gold mines. Traoré has nationalized 2 gold mines and stopped exporting unrefined gold to Europe, instead inaugurating a national gold refinery expected to produce 150 tons annually. Point number 3, agricultural investments. He established the National Support Center for Artisanal Cotton Processing and built Burkina Faso's second cotton processing plant. Number 4, infrastructure development. Traoré has constructed the Ouagadougou-Donson Airport and inaugurated a state-of-the-art gold mine to enhance local processing capabilities. Point 5, salary adjustments. He reduced the salaries of ministers and parliamentarians by 30% and increased the salaries of civil servants by 50%. Debt management, point number 6, Traoré paid off Burkina Faso's local debts. That is a pretty significant accomplishment right there. Paid off their local debts. Of course, they still have the national debt to deal with, but we can imagine that they are moving the right direction. Number 7, tomato processing plants. He has established 2 tomato processing plants, the first ever in Burkina Faso. Point 8, refusal of IMF and World Bank loans. Traoré has rejected financial assistance from the IMF and World Bank, insisting that the country can develop without Western loans and their conditionalities. That's a very, very important point. And he is absolutely right. It will make it harder in the short run to solve the problems without an infusion of cash. But history has shown us very clearly that infusion of cash from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank only brings us under the hegemony of the Washington Consensus, and Burkina Faso does not need that. Gold refinery. In November 2023, Burkina Faso's Council of Ministers approved the construction of the country's first gold refinery, aiming to capitalize on the nation's growing gold mining industry. Point 10. Ibrahim Traoré came to power in Burkina Faso in September 22 after a military coup. Since then, his government has focused on several key areas such as security initiatives. Traoré's administration has prioritized addressing the escalating violence from jihadist groups in the Sahel region. Efforts have been made to strengthen the military and improve security operations against insurgents. Next point, anti-corruption measures. His government has aimed to tackle corruption within the military and government institutions, promoting transparency and accountability. Very important. 13, economic policies. Traoré has sought to stabilize the country, which has been affected by insecurity and the global economic situation. Efforts have included initiatives to boost agriculture and local production. Point 14, international relations. He has worked to redefine Burkina Faso's foreign relations, particularly with countries in the region and beyond, seeking partnerships that align with his government's goals. Point 15, public support. Traoré has garnered significant public support, particularly among youth, for his stance against the previous government's handling of security issues. And point 16, social programs. His administration has initiated programs aimed at improving education and healthcare access, although challenges remain due to ongoing security concerns. These accomplishments are set against a backdrop of significant challenges, including ongoing violence, humanitarian crises, and economic difficulties. The situation in Burkina Faso remains fluid, and the effectiveness of these initiatives continues to be evaluated. That was a pretty good article. And I'm going to go on. The next article I'm going to cite is entitled Revolution from the Soil, Anti-Imperialism and Food Sovereignty in Burkina Faso, written by Colin Todd-Hunter in Off Guardian magazine, May 6, 2025. And this was actually sent to me today by one of my colleagues who knows we have this passionate interest in Burkina Faso. So he got this from offguardian.org, and I'm going to share that link with you right now. Put it up on the YouTube page. I'm going to put this also up on the Rumble page, which is our main broadcasting page here. And bear with me. This is a very important article, and I'm therefore going to include this one for each of us. I'm also going to put this up on my Facebook page. So bear with me. One more click, and here we go. We're up on Facebook as well. And let's go into this next article. Revolution from the Soil, Anti-Imperialism and Food Sovereignty in Burkina Faso, written by Colin Todd-Hunter. Here's what they had to say. Burkina Faso, under President Ibrahim Traoré, has become a focal point for anti-imperialist sentiment and political renewal in Africa. Traoré's government has taken bold steps to assert national sovereignty, including the expulsion of French military forces, the denunciation of Western interference, and the forging of new regional alliances with Russia and Sahelian neighbors. These actions have resonated across the continent, reigniting hopes for a new era of African dignity and self-determination in the post-colonial age. Traoré's vision draws inspiration from the revolutionary legacy of Thomas Sankara, whose leadership in the 1980s prioritized food sovereignty, agroecology, and the empowerment of rural communities. The roots of Burkina Faso's food system stretch back centuries to societies that developed adaptive, resilient agricultural systems rooted in local knowledge, communal land management, and crop diversity. Millet, sorghum, and other indigenous staples form the backbone of both food security and cultural identity. These systems were not only productive, but also sustainable, built on the principles of reciprocity, ecological balance, and community stewardship. French colonial rule, however, upended these systems. Colonial administrators and missionaries imposed new crops and farming methods, often prioritizing exports and the needs of colonial urban centers over local food needs. The introduction of market gardening, irrigation schemes, and export-oriented production disrupted traditional practices and began a long process of dependency on external inputs and distant markets. This colonial legacy was not simply one of resource extraction, but a profound social and ecological transformation, a legacy that continues to shape Burkina Faso's food system today. After independence in 1960, Burkina Faso's food system remained vulnerable. The country experienced cycles of drought, cereal deficits, and reliance on food imports and international aid. Governments experimented with various strategies, but negative cereal balances and regional disparities in food access persisted. It was during the revolutionary period of the 1980s under Thomas Sankara that Burkina Faso articulated one of Africa's clearest visions of food sovereignty. Here, 1 second here. Mm, cucumber water. I love it. Sankara's government rejected food aid, promoted agroecology, and sought to empower rural communities through mass mobilization and local production. Sankara famously declared, quote, "He who feeds you controls you," unquote, encapsulating the deep link between food and national sovereignty. However, his assassination in 1987 cut short these reforms. Today, President Ibrahim Traoré invokes Thomas Sankara's legacy with ambitious initiatives like the 2023 to 2025 Fishing and Agro-Pastoral Offensive, a $981 million plan to boost production of rice, maize, potatoes, wheat, fish, poultry, and mango. The initiative aims to create at least 100,000 jobs for youth, women, and internally displaced people, and to achieve food self-sufficiency by reducing reliance on imports. Mechanization, the distribution of tractors and motor pumps, and the mobilization of thousands of young people into farming are central features. The government has also established a food sovereignty fund to support agro-pastoral actors and encourage local initiatives. Gates Foundation and the AGRA. On the surface, these efforts appear to align with the anti-imperialist vision of national self-reliance. However, a closer look reveals that the underlying strategy is somewhat influenced by the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, and the Gates Foundation. AGRA, which has operated in Burkina Faso for more than 15 years, promotes a model centered on commercial seeds, synthetic fertilizers, and integration into global value chains. The Gates Foundation, AGRA's principal funder, argues that this is the fastest plan to increase yields and food security. The Gates Foundation, primarily through AGRA, has invested at least $16.7 million directly into agricultural transformation in Burkina Faso as of 2019, with broader agricultural commitments totaling nearly $70 million from 2010 to 2018. As of 2025, the most recently publicly documented figure for Gates Foundation investment in Burkina Faso via AGRA is approximately $37 million up to 2021. The Gates Foundation grants database confirms ongoing support to AGRA with grants as recent as October 2024. However, these grants are typically for AGRA's multi-country programs, and the precise allocation for Burkina Faso is not specified in public sources. AGRA's largest investments have historically gone to countries with bigger populations and agricultural economies. Example given: Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Ghana. While important, Burkina Faso has a smaller population of around 22 million people, and its agricultural sector is less diversified and less commercialized compared to AGRA's primary focus countries. Although the amounts invested in Burkina Faso by AGRA may seem modest, given the timescales involved, and AGRA and the Gates Foundation often, bear with me, AGRA and the Gates Foundation often use their funds to catalyze or leverage much larger sums from governments, private sectors, and other donors. For example, AGRA reports that its $37 million investment in Burkina Faso helped unlock over $500 million in additional public and private sector investments. Much of AGRA Gates funding is used for pilot projects, technical assistance, policy reform, which is political influence, and capacity building, rather than direct large-scale subsidies or infrastructure. It must be noted that AGRA and the Gates Foundation publish only selected financial details. The $37 million figure is what publicly documented for Burkina Faso. Yet the model of agriculture promoted by AGRA Gates has come under sustained criticism from the African civil society and food sovereignty advocates. Reports by U.S. Right to Know and other watchdog groups have found little evidence of AGRA's interventions have delivered on their promises in Burkina Faso. The U.S. Right to Know's analysis, based on internal AGRA documents and independent evaluations, reveals that while AGRA's programs have led to some increases in maize sales, there has been no significant improvement in farmer incomes or food security based on AGRA's activities. Moreover, across Africa, AGRA's emphasis on commercial seeds and fertilizers has deepened dependency on external inputs, undermining the very autonomy that Traoré's government wants to champion. U.S. right to know's findings are echoed by African civil society groups, faith leaders, and food sovereignty advocates who have called for an end to agri-funding and a shift toward ecological, locally controlled food systems. The Gates Foundation has long partnered with major agribusiness corporations, including Cargill, Bayer, Syngenta, and DuPont, to roll out industrial agriculture based on genetically modified crops, patented seeds, and heavy agrochemical use. Agri's interventions have opened African markets to these corporations, often by influencing national seed laws and agricultural policies to favor commercial, chemical-dependent seed systems over farmer-saved seeds. This shift undermines the traditional practice, still responsible for more than 80% of Africa's seed supply, of farmers recycling and exchanging seeds, and risks consolidating control of seed research, production, and distribution in the hands of a few multinationals. The Gates Foundation approach is part of a broader neoliberal project, the appropriation of the commons land, seeds, water, and knowledge, transforming them into marketable commodities and driving rural populations off the land. Agri and the Gates Foundation framed their interventions in philanthropic terms, or positioned them as development, when in reality, they are enabling the consolidation of Western agro capital, the erosion of biodiversity, and the disenfranchisement of smallholder farmers. The Gates Foundation is not as a benevolent actor. It is a driver of toxic, unjust, and dependency creating food regime. Now, there's a little bit more to this article. This is some good stuff. I just want to take a moment here and acknowledge anybody and everybody trying to get through to participate in the conversation. And I am not seeing anyone out there. Let me ask, what is your perception of the Gates Foundation numerous strategies to gain hegemony over Africa's food systems? I'd love to hear your opinions. I hope I am not the only one that can have an opinion on this today. But it might just be that. Let me hear your opinion. We continue with this wonderful article from Off Guardian newspaper. It says, Agri played a role in the realignment of our seed law in line with the ECOWAS seed regulation, as acknowledged by Burkina Faso's Ministry of Agriculture. This alignment is part of a broader efforts to harmonize national laws with regional and international standards, which often prioritize commercial seed systems and intellectual property protections. Furthermore, Agri has provided technical and financial support to government ministries and research institutes to advance seed sector reforms and promote the adoption of hybrid seed varieties. AGRA's stated goal is to create, quote, seed policy and regulatory reforms that enable investment and growth of private sector seed businesses, unquote, which typically involves legal frameworks that favor commercial seed companies and restrict the exchange or sale of traditional farmer-saved seeds. Independent evaluations and civil society organizations have criticized AGRA's approach, arguing that these policy reforms can undermine traditional farmer-managed seed systems, reducing seed diversity and making farmers more dependent on purchasing commercial seeds each season. AGRA's influence on seed laws is not unique to Burkina Faso, but it is part of a broader strategy across Africa to promote private sector-led seed systems, often in line with corporate-driven international agreements that strengthen breeders' rights and can restrict farmers' rights to save and exchange seeds. Who then is providing the seeds and agrochemicals that underpin Burkina Faso's current strategy? The supply is coordinated through a combination of government programs, AGRA-backed seed companies, and agro dealers. International organizations such as the UN Food and Agricultural Organization and the EU, and local regional input suppliers. AGRA is a central player in strengthening Burkina Faso's seed system, supporting both government and private seed companies to improve the availability and quality of certified seeds for crops like maize, rice, sorghum, cowpea, and soybeans. The government itself is a major distributor of chemical fertilizers, with recent initiatives allocating substantial quantities to farmers. AGRA's network of agro dealers also plays a role in distributing fertilizers and agrochemicals alongside seeds. International organizations, FAO, the EU, etc., in collaboration with private corporations, provide seeds to vulnerable farmers, especially during food crises, and support local seed and certification. It would be naive to think that corporate interests act out of a sense of benevolence here. I'll repeat, it would be naive to think that corporate interests act out of a sense of benevolence here. For instance, back in 2000, Professor Michael Chossudovsky, in his article, Sowing the Seeds of Famine in Ethiopia, argued that internal aid and trade policies, particularly those promoted by global corporations and institutions like the World Trade Organization, have undermined Ethiopia's traditional agricultural systems and contributed to chronic food insecurity. These policies encourage the dismantling of state programs, such as the emergency grain stocks, seed banks, and extension services, paving the way for multinational agribusinesses to introduce commercial and genetically modified seeds into Ethiopia. This shift pressured Ethiopian farmers to adopt corporate seeds, often at the expense of local varieties and traditional practices, thereby increasing their dependence on external suppliers and making them more vulnerable to market fluctuations and food crises. Such interventions sow the seeds of further vulnerability by eroding local food sovereignty and systems. Food sovereignty and resilience, I should say. There's a comment that's come in, if you don't mind. I'm going to go to the chat at Rumble. I see my brother Nguvu has checked in. Brother Ibrahim is setting the standard by which others are judged. The African world has awakened. Consciousness is a beautiful thing. And I do completely agree with you, Brother Nguvu. And that's why we are so proud of Brother Ibrahim. Yet we realize we still do have significant challenges ahead, including one in which right now the government of Burkina Faso has been cooperating with AGRA. And now we have to figure out a way to untangle that. Now, I have a plan. We have a plan called Kuchichagalia Villages. And in starting a permaculture campus in an African environment, it's a great idea where we can introduce these radical ideas that we have on traditional seed banking, on us becoming self-sufficient, independent, and for us to implement some of the programs of Dr. George Washington Carver. But we got to get there, and it is not going to be cheap. The first of the African, the Kuchichagalia villages, we're expecting to cost about $2 million to put into place. It's going to build housing for at least 50 to 80 people for that $2 million. We can do this. We can certainly do it. I cannot do it alone. I can't. But we can do it. Let me continue with the article. These policies encourage the dismantling of state programs, such as the emergency grain stocks, seed banks, and extension services, paving the way for multinational agribusinesses to introduce commercial and genetically modified seeds into Ethiopia. This shift pressured Ethiopian farmers to adopt corporate seeds, often at the expense of local varieties and traditional practices, thereby increasing their dependence on external suppliers and making them more vulnerable to market fluctuations and food crises. Such interventions sow the seeds of further vulnerability by eroding local food sovereignty and resilience. Continuing. The real power of AGRA, Gates, and the global agribusiness interests they are aligned with lies in their ability to shape the rules of the game through seed laws, input supply chains, and the global architecture of food trade. AGRA's partnerships with these corporations and its role in promoting seed and input systems favorable to their interests means that Burkina Faso's food sovereignty strategy may never be too far from the reach of global agro capital. Anti-imperialism versus technocratic pragmatism. Why then does Traoré's government align with a strategy that risks deepening dependency on external factors? Several factors are at play. First, Burkina Faso faces urgent and severe challenges: widespread food insecurity, displacement due to conflict, climate challenges, and a legacy of colonization. The government is under pressure to deliver rapid, visible results. Mechanized farming, large-scale deployment of youth, and the distribution of inputs are seen as ways to quickly boost yields and create jobs. These approaches are easier to scale in the short term than agroecological transitions, which require more time, training, and local adaptation. That's an excellent point. Second, the dominance of the AGRA-Gates model in African agriculture development means that funding, technical support, and international legitimacy are more readily available for input-intensive, market-oriented projects. Agroecological transformation, by contrast, demands significant investment in farmer training, research, and institution building resources that are often lacking or harder to mobilize at scale. Third, there is a powerful political system in mass mobilization and mechanization. There is a powerful political symbolism in mass mobilization and mechanization. Traoré's initiatives, such as recruiting thousands of youth into mechanized farming, serve as rallying points for national pride and unity. These visible, high-impact projects are easier to communicate to both domestic and international audiences than the slower, less tangible programs of agroecological reform. Yet the risks of this approach are considerable. By deepening reliance on commercial seeds, synthetic fertilizers, and global players, Burkina Faso risks locking itself into a new cycle of dependency. AGRA's own strategic plan for the country emphasizes, quote, crowding in private investment, unquote, and scaling up partnerships with commercial banks and microfinance institutions. At the same time, however, agroecological and community-led approaches are also being piloted in Burkina Faso with promising results. Organizations such as the International Water Management Institute and local NGOs promote integrated farming systems that combine crop diversity, soil health, and water management. Government-led land restoration projects rehabilitate degraded soils using anti-erosion measures, and agro-silvo-pastoral systems, combining agriculture, forestry, and livestock grazing on the same land, creating a mutually beneficial and sustainable land use approach. Community cooperatives, such as those supported by the Near Tamba initiative, strengthening local value chains and empower over 1,500 peasant organizations. These models have demonstrated significant socio-economic and environmental benefits, outperforming conventional input-heavy approaches. This is highly promising because let's not forget that agroecology under Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso was very successful during his brief presidency, 1983 to 1987, both in immediate outcomes and in its enduring legacy for food sovereignty and environmental consciousness. Sankara's agroecological reforms rapidly increased food production and achieved self-sufficiency in basic foodstuffs. Through land distribution, the mobilization of rural communities, and the encouragement of local production over imports, Burkina Faso saw wheat yields rise from 1,700 kilograms per hectare to 3,800 kilograms per hectare in just a few years, and a remarkable achievement given the country's frequent droughts and technological limitations. Sankara was influenced by agroecology pioneer Pierre Rabhi and sought to make agricultural ecology a national policy. He supported the establishment of agroecological centers and promoted scientific approaches that integrated agricultural development with environmental regeneration. The One Village, One Grove program, encouraged by every community to plant trees, reviving pre-colonial traditions and embedding ecological stewardship in Burkinab culture. To combat desertification and recurring drought, Thomas Sankara launched a massive tree planting campaign, resulting in the planting of over 10 million trees in just 15 months. The grassroots people-led reforestation effort became a model for environmental restoration and remains a lasting part of the country's social fabric. I'm going to take a pause right here and check. We do see some more inputs. 1 second. We do see some other inputs. Nguvu writes this: they should stay out of it and away from African food. The soil as it grows some of the most nutrient-rich food in the world. The ability to do that comes from clean earth. Stay away. Stay away. Yeah, stay away is easy for us to say. We then need to be in place to elbow them out. Now, my brain is imagining a whole new reality. I'm seeing Kujichagulia villages. I'm seeing the permaculture campus aspects of it. I'm seeing the eco-tourism aspect of it. I can see the villages, each village being responsible for massive groves, be they trees for harvest, for lumber, for timber, but also massive groves of macadamia trees, Brazil nuts, cashew nuts, all kind of profit-making trees grown organically. I'm seeing this work. I'm doing this work. We should be doing this work. We can do it. It's going to take more than you and me in Google. We are going to have to spark a revolution. We can do it, but we're going to have to get a lot more people involved in it. And I would like to think that we are going to do just that. Now, I'm going to take 1 second here in the background to remind myself to send out a message to the people who are expecting me on a conversation this evening. So 1 second here, let me just give this thing here a boost here. I'm going to put up my mail program. I'm going to send an email to, bear with me. I'm going to send an email to InBand. For those of you who are interested, I am going to be on InBand. This is the first Tuesday. I'm just reminding myself. I am going to be on InBand this evening. And let me just put this in to InBand. I will be on the call this evening, and I will be talking from my newest book, Suicide. And when food is so tasty, it is to die for. Okay, just put that message out there real quickly, and I'll do a follow-up with that a little bit later. Here we go. Where are we at? I got you in Nguvu. Thank you for sending that message, and let's continue with the conversation for today. We're talking about what's happening in Burkina Faso. Sankara's agroecological vision was deeply participatory and linked to a broader social justice goals, including women's empowerment and public health. He created the country's first Ministry of Water, and aimed to provide every Burkinabe with 2 meals a day and clean water, a radical target in a drought-prone Sahel. His approach to food justice and environmentalism was way ahead of its time, emphasizing the need for endogenous development and the dangers of dependency on food aid. While Sankara's reforms were cut short by his assassination in 1987, their legacy endures. Tree planting and ecological consciousness remain embedded in Burkinabe society, and organizations such as Terres Vistas, and bear with me here, I clicked off the page, Thomas Sankara continue to draw inspiration from his pioneering agro-ecological commitments. That's Terres Vivantes, which is long live the land Thomas Sankara. Terres Vivantes Thomas Sankara continue to draw inspiration from his pioneering agro-ecological commitments. Moreover, crop diversity in Burkina Faso improved significantly under Thomas Sankara's leadership. His agrarian reforms and agroecology agenda reversed the narrowing of crops diversity caused by colonialism and post-colonial emphasis on cash crops. So while it is crucial to scrutinize the risks of dependency and the influence of external actors, it is equally important to recognize the significant progress Burkina Faso is making through its ambitious national initiatives and community empowerment projects. The government's focus on job creation, mechanization, and local value chains is already yielding positive social and economic impacts. Furthermore, the revival of agroecological principles and investment in land restoration demonstrate a commitment to sustainable, locally adaptable solutions. However, for Burkina Faso to truly honor its anti-imperialist rhetoric, it must move beyond the aggregates model by investing further in agroecological transformation, land restoration, and cooperative models that put power and resources in the hands of local communities. It must ensure that its quest for food sovereignty is not compromised by the very forces it seeks to resist. And that was awesome. The next article, I am going to go ahead and skip it. I'll put up a link to it, but I can assure you this article is not friendly at all to Ibrahim Traoré and the spirit of Burkinabe people. I will put it in here, but caution, it is not to be taken at face value. It is entitled The Cult of Traoré, post written by Ebenezer Obadare, Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah, you understand. The Council on Foreign Relations is undeniably a power institution of the Western hegemony. I'll give you just a few sentences from it. Rather than a beacon of hope, Burkinabe tyrant Ibrahim Traoré is a pointer to everything that is wrong with the continent. Against all odds, and or for a certain kind of authoritarianism, is having a moment in Africa. Among a cross-section of its intelligentsia and general public, the idea of a lawgiver appears to be back in good odor. And that's just terrible, terrible, terrible writing. And they seem to get it wrong, completely wrong. I'm going to just bow out at this particular point. I'm going to let you know, though, we do have solutions. We have viable solutions that we from the diaspora, from America, can and should be contributing to. I want to thank you all for being a part of this LIB radio mission. But I tell you, we've got a long way to go. We've got to make a commitment. We got to make the decisions on whether or not we are going to participate in the future. If you should choose to participate, then I, for one, have got your back. If you choose not to participate, it is what it is. It do what it do. And it's going to leave us where it chooses to leave us. I'm going to wrap it up this year, this day, and bear with me here. Yeah, we put up some good links. On that note, and I don't know why, but the links to today's program just did not come in. And I'm going to go back. Okay, I see it. Revolution. I got that article, that long one in from the Off Guardian, and that one was the most important one to have gotten in. So on that note, you've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. I also want to remind you, I write books for a living. I sell books. The people most likely to read my books are those most likely to listen to my program. So the reality is that people who listen to the program won't buy the books, then I'm kind of like crapped out of luck. And that's not a good thing to say. So if you should choose to be a supporter of what I do, I will need you to buy the books. You can get my books. Get my books. Let me put this link up. That you can get the books that I mentioned on today's program. You can get the books. You can get my books, including the African Future at http://keidi.biz/CRP 2012. I do highly encourage people to get my books, not my box, to get the books, get the books. Now I'm going to spell this better in the other, but we do need to move these books. And unless and until we do move the books, we're just frozen. So I'm going to post this link up right now. And if I can encourage 3 people, just 3, a mere 3 people, to stand up, get the book, The African Future. This book is really good. I got all 8 of my brand new books out, 8 of them. The African Future is one of the 8. Now, if you can get this book, we're now playing the game. If the game is stress, is chess, not stress, but chess, then we're playing chess. And we can do a lot of good in the world for Africa. But we got to care. We have to care. On that note, I'm out of here for today. You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio. We are LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. We're going to wish you all peace and prosperity to each and every one of you on your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.